We got some big time injury news to discuss on today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome into today's show. So the Vikings are pretty banged up heading into this Week 16 matchup against the New York Giants. They got two players that were just ruled out for the remainder of the season, and this one coming in today, as Kevin O'Connell says, Josh Metellus will get his shoulder repaired as well, similar to Jonathan Greenard. Not stable enough, according to Kevin O'Connell, and then KOC also said, along the same lines as JG, one of our captains and a guy I cannot respect more. So these two will be out for the remainder of the season. Jonathan Greenard, Josh Metellus also on the injury report today. Christian Darrisaw listed there. Javon Hargrave, Brian O'Neill, all did not participate. So the Vikings could be without two of their better players on defense, both starting tackles against the New York Giants in this matchup. So it's going to be a big-time game. I'm excited to watch it. J.J. McCarthy, Jackson Dart, should be a fun one at MetLife Stadium this weekend. But speaking about that game, if you guys could, hit that subscribe button and help me out. I'm taking on my guy, Marshall Green, the host of our Giants Now channel, in a Week 16 subscriber battle. They have the early lead on us at 148 subs compared to 134. So if you guys have not hit that subscribe button just yet, change it today and help us beat Giants Now in total subs gained this week. All right, so Josh Metellus has had a very up and down year for the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, we know his versatility is huge in this Brian Flores scheme. You can drop him in the box. You can play him in free safety. You can line him up as a nickel, defensive lineman, edge rusher. Like, he can play every position on defense. Now, he has struggled in coverage a lot this season. I mean, his coverage grade is 46.8. That's 85th out of all eligible safeties in the league this season. So he clearly hasn't had his best stuff. And that also leaves the Vikings safety room pretty damn depleted. I mean, you got Harrison Smith. Now, I think Harrison Smith's just a one-trick pony at this point where Brian Flores would just line him up on the line. He's either blitzing as a edge rusher or he'll drop into a free zone on the back end. But then you got Theo Jackson, Tavierre Thomas, Jay Ward. So expect to see a lot more of Theo Jackson and Jay Ward in this game and for the remainder of the season for the Minnesota Vikings. Let's start off here talking about Theo Jackson. Now, I was a fan of the contract the Vikings gave Theo Jackson. It wasn't pricey whatsoever. It was just 3 years, $9-something million per season, and he's had a decent year, playing about 40% of the snaps so far for the Minnesota Vikings, but he's a lot better in coverage than Josh Metellus is, and I do think with how rangy Jackson is, maybe he could get an interception this weekend with how creative Flores is. Maybe you could get Jackson Dart caught on one big-time throw down the field. Maybe Theo Jackson can pick it off. So I'm excited to watch him just up his snap count this weekend and play some more football for this defense, but it's also finally time to get a good evaluation of Jay Ward. Like, the Vikings spent a day 3 or early day 3 pick on this guy, and we really haven't seen him play too much this season or frankly at all in his career as a Minnesota Viking. So it's finally time to get a good evaluation on him because they need to get evaluation on this guy because the safety position for the Vikings heading into this offseason is a major position of need because Harrison Smith most likely to retire. Josh Metellus, he's a key cog in the system, but he can just kind of be a versatile player. He's not like a true safety. So the Vikings will need to target safety, whether that's free agency or in the NFL draft. But Jay Ward, he's got the versatility just like Josh Metellus. He's lined up all over the field this year. 5 snaps at defensive line, 24 at box safety, 45 at free safety. He's even played some nickel and some outside corner for the Minnesota Vikings this season. So be curious to see where they line him up. But I'm excited to see just how impactful he is because safeties always excel in Flores' system, so maybe this is a game where he can kind of get his confidence going, get some swagger going, get some momentum going into the rest of the season, the final 2 games against the Packers and Lions. And you got a good opportunity going against a Giants offense that has just been depleted by injuries this year. No Malik Neighbors, no Cam Scadaboo. They got a shaky offensive line, and they have a young quarterback in Flores. Feast on those young quarterbacks normally in his NFL career. But speaking about this game, if you guys could predict a score for me down below in the comments section, the Vikings taking on the Giants. Now, I will say the Vikings are only 3-point favorites in this matchup. So, you're going on the road with a quarterback in J.J. McCarthy who's had a very up and down year. If I had to get my score prediction, maybe around 23-16. I think the Vikings will still win this one, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Giants catch a victory, especially with how depleted the Vikings are. But if you guys could, drop the score predictions down below. Now we'll get to the Jonathan Greenard injury news and talk about that here in just a second. But today's episode is brought to you guys by Factor Meals. If you guys head to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and use promo code VikingsChat50 off, you guys will get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Eating well during the holiday season can feel impossible. That's why I use Factor's chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals to help me stay balanced and energized through the most indulgent time of the year. And I love Factor because they have a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. And covering the Minnesota Vikings, sometimes I don't get out of the office till about 7 o'clock at night, and I don't feel like making a home cooked meal. That's where Factor has stepped in and completely changed my life, and especially changed my eating experience when I get off of work. So eat smart at factormeals.com/VikingChat50 off and use promo code VikingChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code VikingChat50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. This exclusive holiday offer won't last. Lock in your savings before the New Year rush. Offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. All right, so this news broke yesterday. We covered it on our live show, but I want to give you guys more in-depth thoughts here on the second half of today's show. As Jonathan Greenard, star edge rusher for the Minnesota Vikings, is out for the remainder of the season, which is obviously disappointing. I thought Greenard was coming off his best performance this past weekend, Sunday Night Football in Dallas. He was just wrecking havoc. He had a very good PFF grade. He graded out at a 90.9 overall grade, which was one of the highest in the league out of all edge rushers this past weekend, and he's been very good the entire season. Now, obviously, this sack total hasn't been up to Greenard's standard. Like, I think both of the past 2 seasons, he's had 12.5 sacks, but still PFF graded him out very well. The one good thing about Greenard this year, I thought him against the run has been fantastic, and PFF agrees as he's the 7th highest graded edge rusher so far this year in the NFL. And, he's just a guy that plays with his hair on fire constantly. Like, his effort is never questioned. He's always getting off his blocks very well. And he has had a pretty good year in terms of generating pressures. Now, the problem with Greenard is just turning those pressures into sacks. Like, this might be a record in the NFL with the most amount of pressures to the least amount of sacks. I mean, 47 pressures with only 4 sacks is definitely not a good stat that you would want for Jonathan Greenard, but 24 tackles, 25 stops on the year as well for Greenard, so that's even more evidence of him being pretty damn good against the run this season. But, I am excited to watch Dallas Turner. This is a big spot for him. I mean, he has had, some pretty good games this year. He definitely needs to work on being more consistent, playing better against the run, but when he can just pin his ears back, get home to the quarterback, he has been very special in certain spots this season. Now, sometimes when you turn on the film of Dallas Turner, he can get beat pretty handily a lot in a couple of these games. Like, some of these games where, like, certain plays where he'll get beat, he won't just get, beat on the rep. He'll get demolished on the rep, which is definitely something he needs to work on. But, I'm excited to watch him play. Can he keep developing? I think he can. And also, if you just think about the Vikings defense as a whole this week, I would expect them to take a step back this weekend versus the Giants. Now, they have an easier test this week against the Giants compared to the Cowboys last week, as you are going against the Giants offense that is nowhere near compared to the Cowboys offense, but you're also losing one of the most versatile players on defense in Metellus. You're losing your best player on defense in Jonathan Greenard. So it'd be naive for me to say that, the defense is going to have the same production, even as good as I think Flores is. Now, I say all that to say this, like, Flores has had a field day against young quarterbacks in the past, because I always felt like, and especially last year, we talked about this a lot on the channel, where anytime the Vikings played against young quarterbacks, I always felt like the processing side of the quarterback play, especially for these younger guys, is not nearly the same as it was 20, 25 years ago. So having a guy like Flores that really, challenges these quarterbacks to determine what coverage the Vikings are in pre-snap and then immediately decipher what they're in post-snap. So I still think the Vikings defense will have a good enough day, but we'll obviously wait and see what happens this Sunday. But between these two guys, who are you more excited to watch? Is it Dallas Turner? Is it Jay Ward? Drop that player's name down below in the comments section. And we'll get on out of here. Appreciate you guys for watching today's show. SKOL Vikes.